Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Or maybe you're just finding me for the first time tonight. Either way, settle in. Get cozy. Tonight, we are easing into a journey back in time to a world that feels both strangely familiar and utterly alien. We're going to gently explore something deeply human, something that has connected every generation that has ever walked this earth. The arrival of new life. But tonight, we're not talking about sterile hospital rooms or perfectly timed epidurals. Oh no, we're talking about bringing a baby into the world, back in the Middle Ages. Trust me, having a baby back then was nothing like the movies. You probably wouldn't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you get ready to drift off, maybe drop a comment below letting me know where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. It's always wild to see just how far these stories travel now. Dim the lights, turn on a fan, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes, not to the soft glow of a bedside lamp, but to the flickering light of a tallow candle, casting dancing shadows on rough-hewn wooden beams above you. You feel the coarse weave of a linen shift against your skin, the straw-filled mattress beneath you rustling as you shift. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, damp earth from the floor, and perhaps the faint, persistent aroma of livestock from nearby. Outside, you hear the distant lowing of a cow, the crow of a rooster long before dawn, and the occasional creak of a cart wheel on the muddy track. This is your world. You are in a small, humble cottage, somewhere in the vast, patchwork quilt of medieval Europe. Your days here unfold with the rhythm of the sun and the seasons. You rise early, the chill of the morning air biting at your bare feet on the packed earth floor. You tend to the small garden patch, your hands feeling the cool, damp soil, the rough texture of weeds you pull. You grind grain, feeling the strain in your arms, the fine dust coating everything. You spin thread, the repetitive motion of the drop spindle, a quiet, constant hum. You fetch water from the well, the heavy bucket making your shoulders ache. Life is a cycle of physical labor, of necessity, dictated by the needs of the body and the demands of survival. There are no weekends, no holidays beyond the occasional feast day or religious observance. Every sunrise brings the simple, fundamental truth: you must work to eat, to live. But lately, the rhythm has changed, softened slightly. There's a new presence within you, a gentle swelling that has grown over many moons. You feel a different kind of tiredness now, a deep, bone weariness that isn't just from the labor. There are the familiar aches, the swollen ankles, the heartburn that feels like a dragon nesting in your chest after a meal of tough bread and thin gruel. You've felt the flutterings within, a secret dance only you can perceive, a promise of the future unfolding inside your own body. There's a quiet anticipation in the small, tight-knit community you live in. Neighbors notice your changing shape, offering unsolicited advice drawn from generations of passed-down wisdom and old wives' tales. And oh, the tales they tell. Your neighbor, old Agnes, swears that craving sour foods means you're having a boy, while a sweet tooth signals a girl. She also insists you should never, ever tie a knot in a piece of string while you are pregnant, lest it tie a knot in the umbilical cord. It sounds utterly ridiculous, a superstition as flimsy as cobweb, but when you are waiting, when the future feels so vast and uncertain, Even the most absurd piece of advice can lodge itself in your mind, a tiny seed of worry or hope. Imagine yourself sitting by the hearth, the firelight playing on Agnes's earnest face, as she whispers these ancient warnings. Can you feel the strange blend of comfort and unease these old beliefs bring? You try to dismiss them, but a tiny part of you still finds yourself carefully untying any knot you encounter, just in case. The waiting continues. Each day is a step closer to an event that is whispered about in hushed tones, something both natural and fraught with peril. You prepare as best you can with the limited resources you have, perhaps gathering soft rags for swaddling, if you can spare them, or preparing a space by the fire. The world outside your small home continues its cycle of planting and harvest, birth and death, sickness and health. But for you, everything is now focused inward, towards the life growing within. The time is approaching. The ancient, universal moment when a new soul attempts to cross the threshold into this world. And you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that this threshold is a dangerous one to cross. The gentle fluttering you felt months ago has transformed. Now it's a powerful, undeniable force pushing against your ribs, making it hard to catch your breath. Your belly feels like a heavy stone, a constant weight you carry through your days and sleepless nights. Sleep itself is a luxury, often interrupted by the need to shift position, to find a spot that doesn't ache, or by phantom cramps that make your heart leap into your throat before subsiding. You've grown accustomed to the stares, the well-meaning but sometimes intrusive comments from others in the village. Your changing body is a public announcement, a symbol of potential new life, but also of the very real risks you are now facing. One morning, the phantom cramps don't subside. They come back stronger this time, a tightening low in your back that wraps around to the front. You pause in your work, leaning against the rough wall of the cottage, breathing through it. Then it fades. A false alarm, perhaps. But an hour later, it returns, a little more insistent, and then again. The rhythm is irregular at first, like a hesitant drummer finding their beat, but gradually, subtly, the pauses shorten and the intensity grows. This is it. The waiting is over. The ancient, primal work of bringing a child into the world has begun. Panic doesn't have time to fully set in. In this world, certain events trigger immediate, ingrained responses. Your body knows. The women in the village know. You call out, perhaps just a single, strained word or a low moan, and the message spreads like wildfire among the neighboring cottages. Men are usually ushered out. Childbirth is seen as women's business, a sacred, messy, and dangerous mystery they have no part in. Quickly, quietly, the women arrive. Your mother, if she's near, your sisters, your closest neighbors, and most importantly, the village midwife. She isn't a doctor. There are no doctors in the modern sense, not for ordinary folk and certainly not trained in gynecology. The midwife is a woman, often older, who has attended many births, learning through observation, tradition, and sheer hard experience. Her knowledge is a mix of practical skill, folklore, and often deep religious faith. They help you prepare the room, which is usually just the main living space of the cottage, cleaned as thoroughly as possible. Fresh straw might be laid down, rags prepared. The focus is on warmth and creating a safe, perhaps even spiritually protected space. They might bring small pouches of herbs. Mugwort was often used, believed to ease labor, though whether it had any actual physiological effect or just offered psychological comfort is anyone's guess. They might prop you up on pillows or stools. Lying flat was often discouraged, as it was thought to hinder the baby's descent. You are surrounded by a circle of women, their faces etched with concern and quiet determination. Their presence is a comfort, a shared understanding of the ordeal ahead. They will pray, they will offer sips of broth or herbal teas, they will hold your hand. But they have no tools beyond their hands, no pain relief beyond prayer, and perhaps a swig of something alcoholic if you're lucky. Imagine their faces in the dim light, murmuring encouragements and prayers. Can you feel the collective energy in that small room, a mixture of ancient fear and unwavering support? The pain intensifies. It's unlike anything you've ever known, a deep, tearing, all-consuming force that grips your body and demands your surrender. You might bite down on a piece of leather or fabric to stop yourself from screaming, or you might just let the cries escape, raw and primal. The women murmur prayers, perhaps reciting litanies to the Virgin Mary, the patron saint of childbirth, or invoking local saints known for their protective powers. There might be rituals performed, ancient practices woven into the fabric of their faith, perhaps tying keys to your leg, believing it would unlock the passage, or placing holy relics near you. It seems outlandish now, tying keys to a laboring woman, but in a world where understanding of the body was rudimentary and faith was a constant presence, these rituals offered a tangible sense of action, a way to feel some control in the face of overwhelming natural forces. As the hours grind on, marked only by the changing light outside and the relentless contractions within, you enter a different state. The world outside the small room ceases to exist. There is only the pain, the effort, the strained voices of the women around you, and the unseen, powerful work happening within your own flesh. You are a vessel, a channel, engaged in a struggle as old as humanity itself, a struggle where the outcome is never guaranteed. The midwife watches, her face grim, knowing all too well the many ways this journey can end. The air grows thick with the smell of sweat, lamp oil, and the faint, metallic tang of blood that has begun to appear. The path is narrowing. The rhythm of the pain changes again. It's no longer just tightening. Now there's a powerful, involuntary urge, a deep, undeniable pressure that compels you to bear down. This is the pushing phase, the final, grueling effort to bring the child into the world. Your body is screaming, demanding action, demanding release. You grip the hands offered to you, perhaps biting down on the edge of a stool or chair, anchoring yourself against the relentless force. Sweat beads on your forehead, your hair is plastered to your skin, and your muscles scream with effort. The midwife, her expression now intensely focused, coaches you, her voice calm but urgent. Push, she might say, push down like you are at stool. A blunt, practical instruction in a moment of profound, almost spiritual intensity. The air in the small room feels thick, heavy with the mingled sense of effort, fear, and something else, something sharp and metallic that makes your stomach churn. You hear the strained breathing of the women around you, their murmured prayers now taking on a more fervent, desperate tone. Time loses all meaning. There is only this moment, this pain, this immense effort. You feel a tearing sensation, a burning, and the midwife's hands are there, guiding, supporting. She might use a little animal fat or oil to try and ease the passage, but beyond that, her tools are limited to her knowledge of the body and her sheer physical strength. This is the point where the terrifying truth of medieval childbirth becomes starkly, painfully clear. There are no forceps here, no vacuum extractors, no emergency C-sections waiting in a sterile operating room. If the baby is not positioned correctly, if it's breech or transverse, or if its head is just too large, there is almost nothing the midwife can do. Prolonged labor was incredibly common and often fatal for both mother and child. Imagine the horror, the helplessness, as hours turn into days, the contractions weaken, and the baby simply cannot pass. In such cases, if the mother was still alive, the only option might be desperate, brutal interventions, often involving tools that caused unimaginable injury, usually resulting in death for both. It's a chilling thought, the absolute lack of options when nature didn't cooperate. You realize, with a sickening certainty that cuts through the haze of pain, that your body is on its own. You are the battlefield. The risks were terrifyingly high. While precise statistics are hard to come by for the average peasant, estimates suggest that perhaps 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 women died from complications of childbirth or shortly thereafter from infection. Infant mortality was even higher. A significant percentage of babies didn't survive the birth itself, or died within the first few days or weeks of life from complications, infections, or congenital issues. This wasn't just a possibility, it was a common, devastating reality woven into the fabric of life. Every pregnant woman knew, deep down, that she was walking a perilous path, one from which she might not return. For a woman to have several children was not just a sign of fertility, but a testament to incredible resilience and perhaps sheer luck. Beyond the physical dangers, there were also the cultural fears and beliefs surrounding difficult births. Some believed that a difficult labor was punishment for sin, or that the mother was somehow cursed or possessed. This added an extra layer of psychological torment to the already immense physical suffering. Imagine, in the throes of this agony, feeling not just the pain, but the crushing weight of guilt or the fear of divine displeasure. It's a stark reminder that the physical and spiritual worlds were deeply intertwined in the medieval mind, and suffering was often interpreted through a religious lens. As the pushing continues, the pain reaches an almost unbearable crescendo. You hear the midwife's voice rising, urgency creeping into her tone. The other women lean closer, their faces drawn with worry. You feel a burning, stretching sensation that tells you the moment is imminent. One final, monumental effort is needed. You gather every last ounce of strength you possess, pushing with everything you have, letting out a guttural cry that seems to tear from your very soul. The world narrows to this single, agonizing, hopeful point. Then, amidst the fire of pain, comes a sudden, slippery rush. You feel the stretching, the tearing, the intense pressure giving way. A weight shifts, something warm and wet emerges from your body, and for a glorious, breathtaking moment, the most agonizing pain ceases. A collective sigh seems to sweep through the room, a sound of release and tentative hope. The midwife, her hands stained with blood and bodily fluids, holds up a small, slick, purple form. It's silent at first, perhaps for a terrifying instant. The women hold their breath, and then a sound. Not the robust cry you might expect, but perhaps a fragile, reedy gasp, a sputtering cough, or a full-throated wail that cuts through the tense silence like a knife. It is the most beautiful sound you have ever heard. Life, raw, undeniable, and here. The midwife quickly clears the baby's airway, perhaps using her finger or a piece of cloth. She inspects the child quickly, looking for obvious deformities or signs of distress. In a world where infant mortality was so high, the first few minutes were critical, and any visible imperfection or weakness was a source of deep anxiety. The relief that washes over you is profound, an exhaustion so deep it feels like your very bones are dissolving. You collapse back onto the straw mattress, your muscles trembling, your body aching in a million places, but the relentless, consuming pain of labor is gone, replaced by a different kind of sensation, a dull throb, a tenderness, and the strange, empty feeling in your belly where the life you carried so long resided. The air in the room is now thick with the smell of blood, sweat, and the milky, earthy scent of the newborn. It's a smell that is both visceral and deeply ancient, connecting you to every woman who has ever gone through this passage. The midwife then attends to the umbilical cord. There are no sterile clamps here. She might tie it off with a piece of rough thread or sinew, and then cut it with a sharpened knife, a piece of glass, or even, according to some accounts, bite through it. The potential for infection from this simple act was enormous. Imagine the risk: an unsterilized cutting tool, perhaps handled by many hands, creating an open wound on both mother and baby. This moment, seemingly minor to our modern minds, was incredibly precarious and a common entry point for deadly infections. You lie there, exhausted and vulnerable, acutely aware of the sensations in your body, hoping that this final step is completed cleanly. Once the cord is severed, the baby is quickly wrapped in the prepared rags or pieces of cloth, often not blankets as we know them, but whatever soft material could be spared, perhaps an old piece of clothing or a worn sheet. The baby is then presented to you, laid gently on your chest or beside you. You look down at the tiny face, perhaps still smeared with blood and vernix, the little hands curled into fists. This is the culmination of months of waiting, of discomfort, of terrifying pain and uncertainty. This is your child. The wave of emotion is overwhelming: love, relief, awe, and still a lingering fear. The immediate aftermath of birth was almost as dangerous as the labor itself. Puerperal fever, or childbed fever, was a terrifying and all too common killer. Without any understanding of germs or hygiene, the hands that had just delivered the baby might then attend to the mother, examining her, tending to tears or bleeding. Imagine the midwife, after assisting a difficult birth, moving on to the next woman without washing her hands, unknowingly carrying deadly bacteria. This lack of basic sanitation meant that many women who survived the birth itself succumbed to infection in the days or weeks that followed. There were no antibiotics, no way to fight the raging fever and internal damage that childbed fever caused. You lie there, feeling the warmth of the baby, but also acutely aware of the vulnerability of your own body, open and exposed, hoping that infection does not take hold. This period, the lying-in period, was one of enforced rest, but it was also a time of immense danger, a silent, invisible threat lurking in the shadows. The sheer bravery of medieval women facing these odds with every pregnancy is almost unfathomable to us today. You feel the quiet exhaustion settle in, the world outside fading away as you focus on the fragile new life beside you, praying for safety in this perilous post-birth landscape. You drift in and out of sleep, the exhaustion a heavy blanket pulled tight around you. Beside you, the baby makes soft, gurgling sounds, tiny sighs and whimpers that are the soundtrack to your immediate recovery. You feel the tender ache in your body, the raw, bruised sensation that is a physical testament to the battle you just fought. The women who helped you, your birth attendants, are still present, moving quietly around the small room. They might be cleaning up the blood and mess or tending to the fire. Their hushed voices are a comfort, a sign that you are not alone in the vulnerable aftermath. This is the start of the lying-in period, a time when medieval custom dictated that you stay in bed, often for several weeks, recovering. It wasn't just about physical recuperation, which was desperately needed after such an ordeal, but also about cultural and religious significance. This period was a time of purification for the mother, who was often considered ritually unclean after childbirth. Visitors, usually only women from the community, might come to see you and the baby, bringing small gifts of food or offering prayers and well wishes. Imagine them stepping into the dim cottage, their faces kind, offering words of support drawn from their own experiences or the collective wisdom of generations. Can you feel their quiet solidarity, the unspoken understanding that passes between women who have shared this fundamental experience? But even in this period of enforced rest and community support, the danger hasn't entirely passed. You are acutely aware of your body's vulnerability. The risk of childbed fever is still terrifyingly real. Any unusual pain, any feverish chill, sends a jolt of fear through you. You know the stories women who seemed fine after the birth, only to sicken and die a few days later, leaving behind a motherless infant. There are no doctors coming to check on you, no antibiotics to fend off infection. Your recovery is left to your body's own resilience, the care of the women around you, and prayer. The midwife might check on you, perhaps bringing a poultice for soreness or recommending certain herbal infusions, but her remedies are simple. Their effectiveness limited. The baby, too, is incredibly fragile. Newborns faced a host of dangers, from congenital issues to infections, exposure, and simply not thriving. Swaddling was a common practice, wrapping the baby tightly in strips of cloth. The reasoning behind this varied. Some believed it kept the baby warm and secure, mimicking the womb, while others thought it helped shape the baby's limbs correctly or prevented deformities. Imagine the feel of those rough linen strips against the baby's delicate skin, the little form bundled tightly, unable to move its limbs freely. It seems restrictive to us, but it was a deeply ingrained practice, believed to be essential for the baby's well-being. One of the most crucial events following the birth was baptism. This wasn't just a religious ceremony. It was an urgent matter of spiritual and practical survival. If a baby died unbaptized, it was believed their soul could not enter heaven, consigning them to limbo or worse. Given the high infant mortality rate, baptism was often performed within hours or a day or two of birth, especially if the baby seemed weak. A priest would perform the ceremony, or in emergencies, the midwife or even the father could perform an informal baptism with water, just to ensure the soul's salvation. This highlights the profound influence of the Church on every aspect of life, from birth to death. It wasn't an abstract belief. It was a daily reality that shaped actions and instilled both comfort and fear. You understand the urgency. You watch anxiously until the ceremony is performed, feeling a small measure of relief knowing your child's soul is, at least, safe in the eyes of God. During this lying-in time, you are also shielded from much of the household labor, though this varied greatly depending on your family's circumstances. For the poorest families, lying in might be cut short by necessity, but for many, it was a brief respite, a liminal period between the intense physical trial of birth and the relentless demands of motherhood and daily life. The focus is on nourishment, often simple, easily digestible foods like thin gruels or broths, and rest. The women around you might take over some of your tasks, bringing meals, helping with other children if you have them, or tending to the livestock. It's a powerful, though temporary, demonstration of the essential role of female community networks in a world without formal social safety nets or widespread medical support. You feel their presence, a quiet strength that underpins the fragile hope of recovery and survival. The world outside your small cottage continues its quiet rhythm, but for you, time is measured by the needs of the tiny life now cradled in your arms. The days and nights blur into a hazy cycle of feeding, changing, and snatched moments of sleep. You feel the feather-light weight of the baby on your chest, the rise and fall of their small ribcage, the astonishing softness of their skin. The scent of milk, damp cloth, and that unique, sweet newborn smell fills your immediate world. This is the essence of your existence now. Nurturing this fragile spark of life, feeding the baby, is your primary task. For most medieval mothers, this meant breastfeeding. There were no bottles, no formula, no easily accessible alternatives. Breast milk was understood, even then, to be the best source of nourishment, and breastfeeding was the norm. Imagine the feel of the baby latching on, the initial tenderness giving way to a deep, instinctual connection. It's a physical bond, yes, but also a profound emotional one, a quiet moment of communion in a world often devoid of such simple comforts. However, breastfeeding wasn't always straightforward. Poor maternal nutrition could affect milk supply, and issues like mastitis, a painful infection of the breast, were common and dangerous without medical treatment. For wealthier families, or those where the mother was ill or died, there was the option of a wet nurse. These were women, usually from a poorer background, who were hired to breastfeed another woman's child. This practice was widely accepted, especially among the nobility and burgeoning merchant class. Sending your baby away to a wet nurse's cottage might seem cold to us, but it allowed aristocratic women to recover more quickly, and importantly, become pregnant again sooner, which was crucial for producing heirs and navigate social obligations. For the wet nurse, it was a source of income, albeit one that came at the cost of not nursing her own child, who might then have a lower chance of survival if other food sources were scarce. This highlights one of those broader historical contexts. the stark class differences that permeated medieval life, extending even to the intimate act of feeding a baby. Your own reality is likely simpler. The baby depends on you, and you depend on your body to provide for it. You also become intimately familiar with the realities of infant waste. Cloths are used for diapers, but they are rough, quickly soiled, and constant laundry is added to the already immense workload of the household, often falling to the mother as she slowly recovers. There are no disposable diapers, no easy solutions for rashes or irritation beyond perhaps some simple herbs or animal fat. You quickly learn to interpret the baby's cries, hunger, discomfort, pain. Every whimper sends a wave of concern through you, amplified by the ever-present knowledge of how easily a baby can sicken and fade away. There are still strange beliefs surrounding this period. Some folklore held that looking at the moon for too long while pregnant or nursing could cause the baby to have fits or become moonstruck. You might find yourself instinctively averting your gaze from the night sky, a tiny, illogical fear taking root alongside your more rational concerns. Or perhaps you are told never to pass the baby over the hedge to someone, as it might cause misfortune. These small, seemingly nonsensical taboos were deeply embedded in daily life, attempts to exert some form of control over a chaotic and unpredictable world. They are a reminder that medieval life was lived in a constant negotiation between the tangible realities of survival and the unseen forces of fate, magic, and divine. Well, as the days turn into a couple of weeks, the immediate physical danger of the birth recedes slightly, replaced by the constant, grinding anxiety of keeping this tiny human alive. You are still weak, your body healing from the trauma, but the demands of motherhood are immediate and relentless. There is no maternity leave in the modern sense. Your return to daily labor begins as soon as you are physically able, sometimes much sooner than you should. The resilience required is immense, a quiet strength forged in the crucible of necessity. You watch your child sleep, a tiny hand curled against their cheek, and feel a fierce, protective love mingled with an almost overwhelming sense of responsibility. The journey hasn't ended. It has just begun, the fragile start of a life lived on the knife edge of survival. Slowly, painstakingly, you begin to reclaim your place in the rhythm of daily life. The lying-in period, if you were fortunate enough to have one of any significant length, draws to a close. The help from your neighbors and family lessens, or perhaps never fully materialized if you were on the fringes of the community or particularly poor. The aches in your body are still present, a dull reminder of the intense physical ordeal, but they are now compañeros to the constant demands of the baby. You find yourself juggling tasks, stirring the pot over the fire with one hand while bouncing the baby in your other arm, or trying to spin thread with the baby swaddled tightly against your chest. The exhaustion is deeper now, a chronic state that settles into your bones. Sleep is a fractured thing, interrupted by the baby's cries for nourishment or comfort, and by the fundamental need to rise before dawn to begin the day's labor. The constant, gnawing worry for your child's health becomes a part of your emotional landscape, as ever-present as the chill in the winter air or the heat of the summer sun. Every sneeze, every cough, every change in feeding pattern sends a jolt of anxiety through you. You watch your baby constantly, looking for any sign of distress. This is a world where childhood illnesses were rampant and often fatal. Measles, whooping cough, dysentery, these weren't just unpleasant ailments. They were deadly threats that could sweep through a village, claiming the lives of multiple children in a matter of days. There were no vaccines, no antibiotics, no understanding of viruses or bacteria. When your baby sickens, as they inevitably will at some point, your options are incredibly limited. You might turn to the village-wise woman or the midwife again, who might offer herbal remedies, perhaps a tea made from chamomile to soothe a fever, or a poultice made from various leaves applied to the chest for a cough. Some remedies seem surprisingly practical, drawn from generations of observing the effects of plants. Others are rooted in superstition and sympathetic magic, perhaps hanging an amulet around the baby's neck to ward off evil spirits believed to cause illness, or performing small rituals over their crib. Imagine mixing a brew of herbs, hoping against hope that this earthy concoction, passed down through your family, will be enough to fight off the unseen forces attacking your child. It's a poignant blend of practical action and desperate faith in a world where the line between medicine and magic was incredibly blurred. Medieval medical texts for children, often written by monks or scholars with little actual experience of caring for sick infants, offered advice that ranged from the benign to the downright dangerous. They might recommend strange diets, harsh purges, or even bloodletting for infants, practices that likely did more harm than good. You, however, are unlikely to have access to such texts or scholars. Your knowledge is grounded in the practical, the observed, and the inherited. You rely on the women around you, sharing knowledge and experience, offering what little support and advice they can. The reality of infant mortality casts a long, dark shadow over these early years. Losing a child wasn't a rare tragedy. It was a tragically common event. Many families expected to lose at least one or two children, sometimes more. This doesn't mean they didn't grieve. The pain of losing a child was as profound then as it is now. But it shaped their outlook, perhaps leading to a certain emotional resilience born of necessity, or a deep reliance on faith to understand and cope with such loss. You might see simple, tiny grave marked in the churchyard, silent testaments to lives cut tragically short. You hold your baby a little tighter, whisper extra prayers, and try not to dwell too much on the fragility of their existence. Every day they survive feels like a small victory against overwhelming odds. You learn to find joy in the small things, a smile, a first tooth, a crawling milestone, cherishing these moments keenly, knowing how quickly they can be taken away. This constant dance between fierce love and simmering fear becomes the quiet pulse of your life as a medieval mother. As the months pass, the baby grows, transforming from a fragile, helpless infant into a slightly less fragile, still vulnerable small human. They begin to smile, to reach for you, to make cooing sounds that bring a rare lightness to your often te yager ye el yeru ikratkoi heavy days. These small milestones feel monumental, each one a triumph against the pervasive threat of illness and death that hangs over every medieval household with young children. You watch them crawl, their little hands exploring the dusty floor, their curiosity a bright, persistent flame in the dimness of the cottage. But the worry never truly dissipates. It's a low hum beneath the surface of your daily life. Every fever is a crisis, every bout of diarrhea a source of intense alarm. The common childhood illnesses we treat easily today were killers in the Middle Ages. A simple cold could turn into pneumonia. Measles could lead to blindness or death. Dysentery, spread by poor sanitation, was a frequent and devastating visitor to villages. You learn to read the subtle signs in your child's face, the listlessness, the flushed cheeks, the shallow breathing, with an agonizing expertise born of necessity. When illness strikes, your world shrinks to the confines of the sickbed, often just a straw mattress near the fire. Your remedies remain limited. Warm broths, attempts to keep the child comfortable and hydrated, though the understanding of hydration was rudimentary, and the same herbal infusions or poultices. Prayer becomes even more fervent, desperate pleas directed to God, to the Virgin Mary, or to saints known for healing children. You might make vows, promising pilgrimages or offerings if your child is spared. Imagine yourself kneeling by the rough wooden crib, the child burning with fever, whispering prayers into the quiet night, feeling utterly powerless in the face of the disease. It's a profound isolation, even with the support of neighbors, because ultimately, the battle is being fought within your child's small body, and you can only watch and pray. Childhood itself in the Middle Ages was a different landscape than the one we know. There wasn't a concept of a protected, extended period of innocence focused solely on play and education, at least not for peasant children like yours. From a young age, children were integrated into the labor of the household and the fields. As soon as they were physically able, perhaps around the age of 6 or 7, they would begin to contribute. This might mean helping with simple chores, carrying water, gathering firewood, tending to younger siblings, or helping in the fields during planting or harvest times. It wasn't cruelty, it was simply the economic reality of survival. Every pair of hands was needed to keep the family afloat. Imagine your child, barely out of toddlerhood, already tasked with carrying small bundles of sticks or watching over a younger brother or sister, their small face set with concentration. It's a stark reminder of how quickly childhood transitioned into the demands of labor. This early integration into work meant that formal education was rare for children of your standing. Learning was primarily observational, and practical skills were passed down from parent to child, learned by doing. Boys might learn farming, carpentry, or a craft if their father had one. Girls learned the skills necessary to run a household: cooking, cleaning, spinning, weaving, gardening, and animal husbandry. Literacy was uncommon. Your child's future was largely predetermined by your own place in society and the skills you could pass on to them. There were no schools waiting, no distant universities, just the demanding, immediate classroom of daily life and labor. Have you ever stopped to think about how different your own childhood would be if your daily life was centered around contributing to the physical survival of your family from such a young age? It offers a perspective on the privileges we often take for granted today. Despite the hardships, there were moments of simple joy. Children would play, of course, with whatever was at hand: sticks, stones, homemade dolls of rags or wood. There would be storytelling around the fire in the evenings, simple songs, and the shared experience of community life during feast days or local gatherings. But the shadow of vulnerability was always present. The transition from babyhood to childhood was a perilous journey, one where many children simply didn't make it. Every birthday celebrated, however simply, was a profound victory against the formidable odds. You hold your growing child, feeling the solid weight of them in your arms, and you know with a deep certainty that getting them this far is an accomplishment in itself. But the path ahead remains uncertain, fraught with invisible dangers. You navigate the years that follow, a constant, low-level hum of anxiety accompanying the joys and demands of raising a child in this world. Your child is no longer a completely helpless infant, but they are still incredibly vulnerable. Their small legs carry them across the dusty floor, their hands explore everything, and their mouth seems determined to taste the world, a constant source of worry in a place where sanitation is a concept utterly unknown to you. The village ditch serves as a sewer, animals wander freely, and clean water is a precious commodity, often drawn from sources easily contaminated. You do what you can, teaching your child simple hygiene like washing hands before eating, though the concept of germs is centuries away from being understood. It feels sometimes like trying to hold back a rising tide with your bare hands. Summer brings its own set of worries. While the longer days mean more time for work and growth, they also bring the heat, drawing out sickness like a malign vapor from the damp earth. Dysentery, often called the bloody flux, is a terrifyingly common summer ailment, especially for children. You know the signs: sudden fever, stomach cramps, and the horrifying, relentless diarrhea, often streaked with blood. It dehydrates a small body with frightening speed, leaving them weak and listless. Imagine watching your child, usually full of boundless energy, lying still and pale, their eyes sunken, their breathing shallow. This is not just a stomach bug. This is a potentially fatal enemy taking root within their fragile system. When the flux strikes, your heart sinks. You turn to the same remedies. Keeping them warm, offering sips of thin broth or water, though clean water itself is a challenge, and perhaps administering herbal remedies known in your village for soothing the gut, maybe a decoction of blackberry leaves or a poultice of certain roots. There's no understanding of replacing lost fluids or administering electrolytes. Your efforts feel pathetically small against the force of the illness raging within your child. The lack of effective medicine is a brutal reality. While there were some basic surgical procedures and herbal pharmacopoeias in the medieval period, these were largely confined to monasteries or the households of the wealthy. For you, a peasant woman, medical knowledge is folk knowledge, passed down through generations, a mix of practical observation and sheer superstition. It's like fighting a dragon with a sharp stick. You do what you can, but the odds feel overwhelmingly stacked against you. The community rallies around in these times of sickness, too. Neighbors might bring small gifts of food, offer help with your chores, or simply sit with you, offering quiet support and shared anxiety. They understand. They have likely faced similar battles in their own homes, perhaps won some, perhaps lost others. There's a shared understanding of the precariousness of life, especially young life. You feel their empathy, a silent acknowledgement of the fear that grips you. Imagine sitting together, the women of the village sharing hushed stories of children lost, of remedies tried, of prayers unanswered. Can you feel the weight of that collective experience, the shared grief and resilience that binds them together? Beyond specific illnesses, there was also the constant threat of accidents. A world without safety regulations, where open fires were the primary source of heat and cooking, where tools were sharp and animals were strong, was inherently dangerous for small, curious bodies. Falls, burns, cuts, animal bites. A simple accident could easily turn deadly without access to proper medical care. You find yourself constantly watching your child, calling them away from the fire, keeping them close when animals are near, your voice sharp with a fear that is always present, just beneath the surface of your calm exterior. It's a constant negotiation between allowing them the freedom to explore and learn, and the paralyzing fear of what could happen in an instant. One evening, as you sit by the fire, mending clothes by the flickering light, your child coughs. It's just a small cough at first, easily dismissed. But then it comes again, deeper this time, and again, your stomach tightens. You look at their flushed face, the slightly too bright eyes. You feel their forehead, it's warm. That familiar jolt of fear shoots through you, sharp and cold, cutting through the quiet domesticity of the evening. It's beginning. You realize with a chilling clarity that no matter how much you love them, no matter how carefully you watch them, you are ultimately powerless against the invisible forces of disease and accident that stalk this world. You are doing everything you can, but in the face of medieval reality, everything you can do feels terribly, terrifyingly little. This is the burden you carry, a weight that never truly leaves you. The years creep by, marked not by calendars as you know them, but by the turning of the seasons, the planting and the harvest, the cold bite of winter and the sweet relief of spring. Your child grows, their legs sturdy enough to carry them through the mud and dust of the village paths, their hands now capable of simple tasks. They are no longer entirely helpless, but the fragility of life remains a constant, uninvited guest in your home. The lane outside your cottage is often muddy, shared by livestock and people alike. Waste is typically thrown into a communal ditch or simply onto the ground, left to be washed away by rain or scavenged by animals. Clean water fit for drinking is a constant challenge. Wells can be contaminated by surface runoff, streams polluted upstream. You might try to boil water if you have enough fuel and the time, but this is not a consistent practice. You simply drink what is available, hoping for the best. This environment, teeming with unseen dangers, is the backdrop against which you try to keep your family healthy. Imagine the smells that hang in the air after rain, the thick, earthy odor mixed with animal waste and decay. Can you feel the ever-present dampness, the texture of the muddy ground beneath your rough shoes? It's a world that constantly challenges the body's defenses. Because of this, illnesses we might consider minor today were terrifyingly common and devastating. The flux, a violent form of dysentery, could sweep through a village, leaving death in its wake, particularly among the very young and the very old. Measles wasn't just a rash and a fever. It could lead to blindness, pneumonia, or brain inflammation. Whooping cough, a seemingly endless, gasping struggle for breath, often exhausted infants and young children to death. There were no vaccines, no understanding of how these diseases spread, beyond perhaps vague notions of bad air or divine displeasure. When your child is sick, you watch them with a knot of fear in your stomach, recognizing the symptoms that have claimed other children in the community. You see their small bodies struggling, and you know with a chilling certainty that there is often little you can do beyond offering comfort and praying for a miracle. Your remedies are those passed down through generations. Herbal teas brewed from plants known to have some effect on symptoms, perhaps willow bark for fever, containing a precursor to aspirin, though you don't know that, or mint for an upset stomach. You might try poultices made from bread or herbs to draw out infection from a wound, though the concept of infection itself is a mystery. You might consult the village wise woman, who combines her knowledge of herbs with incantations or charms. She is not a trained physician. There are none accessible to you. Her knowledge is a blend of genuine herbalism, folklore, and sympathetic magic. Some families might hang specific amulets or relics around a child's neck, believing it would ward off illness or evil spirits. It seems quaint now, relying on a pouch of dried herbs or a piece of bone tied with string. But in a world without effective medicine, these were the only tools you had. A desperate attempt to exert some control over the unpredictable forces of sickness and health accidents, too, were a constant threat. A kitchen fire unattended for a moment, a slip near the well, a fall from a ladder used for roof repairs, or even a bite from a rat. These mundane occurrences could have devastating consequences. You are constantly vigilant, calling out warnings, pulling your child away from danger. But you cannot watch them every second of every day. The demands of your own labor are too great. You accept with a grim understanding that risk is an inherent part of life. Every scar your child bears is a story of a close call, a reminder of the dangers they have navigated simply by existing in this environment. One cold evening, as you sit by the hearth, the only source of warmth, you hear your child stir. They let out a small, weak cough. You pause in your mending. The cough comes again, a little deeper this time, a rattling sound that makes the fine hairs on your arms stand up. You turn towards them, your heart giving a sudden, painful lurch. Their breathing seems a little faster than normal. You reach out a hand in the dim light, touching their forehead. It's warm, too warm, and in that instant, the quiet comfort of the evening shatters. The familiar, cold knot of fear tightens in your stomach. You realize, with a sickening clarity, that no matter how many seasons have passed, no matter how much they have grown, the battle for their life is never truly over. The dangers are always present, lurking in the air, in the water, in every corner of this world. And you, armed only with prayers and herbs, must face them again, alone with your child in the flickering firelight. This is the terrifying, ongoing truth of motherhood in the Middle Ages. The small cough you heard last night has deepened into a harsh, barking sound that tears at your heart every time your child struggles for breath. Their face is flushed, their eyes glassy with fever, and they are listless, no longer interested in the simple wooden toy you carved for them. You sit by their side, running a hand across their hot forehead, feeling the rapid, shallow rise and fall of their chest. The air in the cottage, usually thick with the smell of smoke and cooking, now carries the coppery scent of sickness. Every labored breath your child takes echoes the fear tightening in your own chest. You offer sips of water, but they turn their head away, too weak to swallow much. You've tried the remedies you know. A poultice of warmed onions on their chest, meant to draw out the congestion. A strong-smelling herbal tea, brewed from ingredients gathered carefully from the woods or your small garden patch, forced between their lips in tiny sips. You've whispered prayers, countless Ave Marias, promises to patron saints if only this fever would break, if only this terrible cough would ease. But the illness seems relentless, a physical entity you can feel but cannot see or fight effectively. It feels sometimes like you are wrestling with a ghost, a powerful, invisible enemy that holds your child captive. In your desperation, you might consider other, more unorthodox methods whispered about in the village. Perhaps the old woman who lives on the edge of the woods, rumored to have knowledge of ancient charms and poultices that predate the Christian faith. She might suggest wrapping the child in a sheepskin fresh off the animal, or passing the child through a split tree trunk in a ritual meant to transfer the sickness to the wood. It sounds outlandish, almost frightening, a step away from the familiar comfort of prayer and recognized herbs. But when your child is struggling for life, when the remedies you know have failed, even the most bizarre suggestion can hold a desperate flicker of hope. Imagine the conflict in your mind, the deep-seated faith you hold versus the primal urge to try anything, absolutely anything, to save your child. You feel the weight of tradition and the pull of sheer, raw desperation. This period of intense, agonizing uncertainty can last for days. Days that stretch into an eternity as you watch your child struggle, counting every labored breath, praying for the fever to break. Sleep is impossible. You doze fitfully by their side, waking at the slightest sound, your hand instinctively reaching out to touch their skin, to feel their breath on your fingertips. Your own body aches with exhaustion and tension, but your focus is entirely external, fixed on the small, vulnerable life hanging in the balance. The heartbreaking reality of this world is the sheer frequency of such moments. Child mortality wasn't just high, it was a constant, looming presence. It shaped family structures, emotional bonds, and the very way people thought about life and death. Parents loved their children fiercely, but perhaps with an underlying protective caution, a tacit understanding that this life was a gift that could be swiftly reclaimed. For a child to survive past their 5th birthday was considered a significant milestone, a sign that they had weathered the most dangerous period. To reach adulthood was a triumph, a testament to resilience, luck, and perhaps divine favor. Think about that for a moment. Imagine living in a world where reaching the age of 5 was a major achievement. It completely reframes our understanding of childhood, doesn't it? You look at your child, their little face drawn with sickness, and a wave of fierce, protective love washes over you, so intense it feels like a physical pain. You would do anything for them, bear any burden, endure any suffering yourself if it would ease theirs. You are utterly powerless to make the sickness go away, but you can offer comfort, presence, and unwavering love. You lie down beside them on the rough mattress, pulling their small body close, feeling the heat radiating from them. You whisper stories, sing simple lullabies, trying to soothe them, to offer whatever small measure of peace you can in the grip of the illness. And in that quiet, fearful moment, holding your sick child in your arms in the dim light of the medieval cottage, you realize with a chilling certainty, you are not just fighting for their life, you are fighting against the very nature of this world, a world where life is cheap and death is a constant, familiar neighbor. The love you feel is immense, but the vulnerability of the life you hold is terrifyingly, brutally real. The hours crawl by, marked only by the weakening light filtering through the single, small window and the sound of your child's difficult breathing. The harsh cough continues, interspersed with whimpers of discomfort. You feel a profound helplessness settle over you, heavy as the damp air in the cottage. You have exhausted your meager store of remedies. The herbs seem to offer no relief. The prayers feel like whispers lost in the vast, indifferent sky. Your mind, usually occupied with the endless list of daily tasks, is now focused solely on this small, struggling body. The world outside is forgotten. The livestock, the garden, the unspun thread, they all cease to exist in your mind. There is only this room, this child, and the agonizing uncertainty that grips you. You remember other children in the village who have suffered similar illnesses, the ones who recovered, their faces pale but eventually regaining their color, and the ones who didn't. You try to push the images of tiny shrouded bodies from your mind, but they linger at the edges of your vision, a stark reminder of the fragility of life. It's a silent, shared trauma that binds the female community together, a dark thread woven into the tapestry of their lives. If the child worsens, the women from the village might gather again, their faces solemn. Not to assist with birth this time, but to offer comfort, to share in the vigil, and perhaps to prepare for the worst. The rituals surrounding child death were deeply important, guided by the Church's teachings on the salvation of young souls, particularly those who had been baptized. A child's funeral would be a somber, heartbreaking affair, the smallest coffin carried to the churchyard, another tiny mound added to the growing collection of graves. The grief would be profound, a pain that never truly leaves a parent, but it would be borne with a certain stoicism, a grim acceptance that this was a part of life, a part of God's will. Imagine the quiet sorrow of those processions, the hushed prayers, the heavy silence of grief shared among people who understood the immense, unpredictable power of death. But tonight, you cling to hope. You watch the subtle changes in your child's breathing, listen intently to the sounds they make. The hours drag on, the candle flickering lower, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to mock your fear. You feel the profound isolation of this moment, even with the possibility of neighbors nearby. The ultimate fight is your child's, and you can only be a witness, a guardian, offering the little comfort and care you possess. The cough, though still present, sounds a little less harsh, a little less frequent. The fever, when you touch their forehead again, feels slightly less intense. Their breathing, though still rapid, seems a little smoother, less of a struggle. It is a subtle change, easily missed, but to you, who has been watching them with agonizing intensity for hours, it is a monumental shift, a fragile flicker of light in the oppressive darkness. Hope, tentative and trembling, begins to stir within you. You hold your breath, watching, listening, afraid to believe it's true. Is the tide turning? is the battle against all odds being won as the first faint light of dawn begins to paint the sky outside your small window. Your child stirs again, their eyes fluttering open. They look at you, their gaze still hazy with sleep and sickness, but there is a flicker of recognition there. They don't cough immediately. A small, shaky sigh escapes their lips. And in that moment, a wave of profound, bone-deep relief washes over you, so powerful it makes your knees weak. They are not out of danger, not by a long shot. Recovery will be slow, and the vulnerability will remain. But they have survived the darkest hours. They have clung to life. You pull them gently into your arms, their small bodies still warm but no longer burning with fever, and hold them close, tears stinging your eyes. In a world where life is so precarious, where death is a constant companion, every single life saved feels like an act of defiance, a precious, hard-won miracle. This is the reality of medieval motherhood, a relentless dance between fierce love and crushing fear, a constant struggle for survival against odds that would break a modern spirit, yet one endured with remarkable resilience, fueled by love and a stubborn refusal to give up on the fragile, precious lives entrusted to your care. You are utterly exhausted, but in your arms you hold the most valuable thing in the world, and for now, for this moment, that is enough. Done story, sweet dream.